The media and big tech try to rewrite Kamala Harris's record. Joe Biden goes after the Supreme Court. Plus, local SWAT members speak out on what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
God bless the United States of America.
Okay, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start with Kamala Harris and the massive effort that's going on to completely rewrite her life story as a radical left-wing extremist. By now, you probably know that the so-called nonpartisan ranking service GovTrack has removed Harris's 2019 rating, which showed her as the most liberal senator in Washington, D.C. That's right, more liberal than Bernie Sanders. But that's not all. The left-wing media are now in overdrive, trying to paint Harris as a moderate. Yes, this is a full-blown Democrat voters are stupid strategy, and it's playing out before our eyes.
Prosecutors are not really leftists. They put people in jail for a living, okay? They're pretty moderate. I know the vice president personally. She's moderate.
The radical in this campaign, Michael, is not Kamala Harris, as all the Trump advertising is saying now. The radical right-winger is Donald Trump.
This shocking radical left agenda is actually mainstream economic populism.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans just lie, lie, and lie. Her record is very clear for anybody who wishes to take a look at it.
Well, Democrat James Clyburn got that part right. Her record is clear. Here's Harris on defunding the police.
Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. For too long, the status quo thinking has been you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong. This whole movement is about rightly saying we need to take a look at these budgets and figure out whether it reflects the right priorities.
Poll after poll after poll of people living in high crime areas want more police, not fewer patrols, more police presence. But defund the police isn't the only check in the left-wing box. There are plenty of others.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines, reduce red meat specifically?
Yes, I would. I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. The idea is that everyone gets access to medical care, and you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company. Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Free healthcare for illegal aliens, no red meat, no more energy independence, defund the police, and of course, a wide open border, which she oversaw as Border Czar. Oh wait, that's being erased too. Well, we all know that she was named Border Czar. There was a ceremony at the White House with Joe Biden naming her Border Czar. But what we are seeing before our eyes is a complete makeover from radical to rockstar. The Democrat who dropped out in 2020 before even the Iowa caucuses because she was so unpopular, the person who consistently polls worse than Joe Biden, that person is now this person. Welcome to Camelot? Give me a break. But this is what we're in for. Fake enthusiasm for a radical leftist. All right, next let's talk about Joe Biden and the Supreme Court. But first, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, regardless of platform, just search out my name, hit that subscribe button, make sure notifications are turned on. That way you can follow the show and help us grow. Okay, next let's talk about Joe Biden and his parting shot now that he's been overthrown in a coup and will no longer be the Democrat nominee for president. Instead, he's trying to rework the Supreme Court before he heads out the door. In what is being spun as Supreme Court reforms, Biden is going after the court for one simple reason. Democrats don't control the court, and they desperately want to do so. Rather than being a co-equal branch of government, along with Congress and the executive, Democrats want the Supreme Court to simply be another legislative arm for radical Democrat policies. The so-called defenders of democracy have been attacking the Supreme Court relentlessly, undermining confidence in the court just so the Democrats can advance their leftist agenda.
These would include no immunity for crimes a former president committed in office, term limits for Supreme Court justices and a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. Joe Biden also releasing a new op-ed this morning saying in part, quote, "This nation was founded on a simple yet profound principle. No one is above the law. Not the President of the United States, not a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States, no one. I have overseen more Supreme Court nominations as Senator, Vice President, and President than anyone living today. I have great respect for our institutions and separation of powers. What is happening now is not normal, and it undermines the public's confidence in the court's decisions, including those impacting personal freedoms. We now stand in a breach."
Great respect for separation of powers? He knows that by going after a co-equal branch of government, trying to exert his power over another branch. That's what he's doing. That's not separation of powers. That's not respect. We've seen AOC go after the court. We've seen Kamala Harris. And now Joe Biden is taking action. If you want to know what Democrats expect the court to be, all you have to do is look back at Senate confirmation hearings of Supreme Court justices. The Democrats will ask questions about how justices feel about certain issues like abortion or gay marriage, as if feeling matters when applying the Constitution to laws which are under review. But that's just it. Democrats don't want justices who apply the Constitution. They want more legislators, people who will twist the Constitution or outright ignore it in order to enact policy. That's not what the Supreme Court is all about. Here's some analysis.
Democrats cannot simply pass a law imposing term limits on justices because life terms are embedded in the Constitution. So it requires amending the founding document, which is such a high bar that it has zero chance. Ironically, though, Joe Biden is calling for an amendment to override the presidential immunity decision. Again, that may sound like catnip to liberals who hate the ruling, although they shouldn't. It protects Democrat presidents like Joe Biden.
Keep in mind that Kamala Harris and others have also proposed expanding the court to whatever number they want in order to get more leftists on the bench. If the Constitution should be amended in any way, it would be to keep the number at 9, so that the Democrats don't have the political talking point of packing the court. Here's more information from Jarrett.
I find it interesting that Joe Biden has spent decades opposing the very kind of radical reforms that he now advocates. And it's also pretty amusing, Steve, an 81-year-old president wants to age out younger high court justices that are a lot more sentient than Joe Biden is.
So there you have it. Joe Biden, who spent some 36 years in the Senate, wants term limits. That's just classic. All right, next let's talk about the latest information coming out on the attempted assassination of former President Trump. First off, I believe it is vitally important to talk about this issue because of the massive failures that occurred that day. We must get to the bottom of what really happened. Second, we can't let the media and big tech do what they are clearly trying to do, and that is push this story aside as if it never happened. A man running for president who also was a former president was shot. Another person, Corey Comparator, died. 2 others were wounded. And Google is actively hiding search results. It's as if this whole thing never happened. In reality, the failure of the Secret Service continues to come to light. ABC News interviewed a local Pennsylvania SWAT team that was at the scene. And the statements from the members of this team are just stunning.
Members of the Beaver County SWAT team described to ABC News what they consider to be failures of planning and communication that would prove catastrophic.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened. So I think that was probably a pivotal point where I started thinking things were wrong, because that never happened, and we had no communication with the Secret Service.
You had no communication with the Secret Service at all on that Saturday?
No, not until after the shooting, I believe. Yeah.
And by then?
It was too late.
Unreal. No meeting, no communication. And here's what we have learned. These local SWAT team members identified the shooter and his suspicious movements nearly 2 hours before the shooting. Nearly 2 hours before. And the shooter was on the radar screen of SWAT. Yet Secret Service didn't act.
The SWAT team from Beaver County, Pennsylvania knew something about the scrawny young man seemed off. He can be seen in this video obtained by ABC affiliate WTAE skulking around former President Trump's rally. Text messages between local snipers show they noticed Thomas Matthew Crooks at 4:26 p.m., nearly 2 hours before the attempted assassination that would injure Trump, kill a man, and severely hurt 2 others. "You see me go out with my rifle," one of the snipers texted, "so he knows you guys are up there." By 5:14 p.m., they grew suspicious.
Not only did they become suspicious, but to the extent possible, they took action by forwarding this information along. And now we know that that information wound up in the Secret Service black hole.
He was looking up and down the building and just wandering around, and it just seemed out of place.
Greg Nichols snapped these photos of the shooter.
We had a text group between the local snipers that were on scene. I had sent those pictures out to that group and advised them of what I noticed and what I'd seen.
What do you think is transpiring once you send in what you've sent in?
I assumed that there would be somebody coming out to, speak with this individual or, find out what's going on.
So how do you know if Greg's concerns about crooks are being relayed properly?
We don't.
Epic failures. Intentional or incompetence? That's the question, and it is imperative that investigations continue and people are held accountable. It's not enough for Kimberly Cheadle to resign. Others need to be fired or perhaps thrown in jail. And next, here are some rapid-fire headlines from around the country. First, with the massive backlash that the Olympics are facing because of their mockery of Christianity and the Last Supper, depicted by drag queens and transgenders during the opening ceremony, the Olympic organizers stood by the presentation, saying it was designed to promote tolerance. Sure, unless you're one of the 2 billion Christians on the planet. One of the drag queens involved in the show said today that the opening ceremony did ruffle some feathers, and I love it. And remember, to the ones out there that had their feathers ruffled, seeing queerness on their screen, we ain't going nowhere. End quote. Next, the sudden massive influx of funds that Kamala Harris has received has raised eyebrows, and now there are calls for an investigation. Through reporting by James O'Keefe and others, and easily accessible internet searches, it sure looks like Act Blue, the fundraising site used by Democrats, is being used to funnel money through many small contributions. Looking at the donations, O'Keefe has learned that many elderly people with limited financial resources are now on record for contributing tens of thousands of dollars. In one case, one elderly donor could have contributed only by making 3 contributions per day, every day, for a year. Highly unlikely. Act Blue appears to be laundering money, and now Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares is looking into the allegations. Finally, the Navy has settled a lawsuit involving forced COVID vaccinations during the pandemic. As reported by the Gateway Pundit, the settlement ensures that Navy service members who refuse the COVID vaccine for religious reasons will now have an opportunity to have their records corrected and their careers protected. Service members who elected to leave service after being mistreated by the Navy will also get their records corrected. This is a good first step, but no one should have to use the religious objection clause to refuse the COVID shots. People's lives and careers were destroyed because of vaccine mandates, and corporations should pay the price, and people should go to jail. Friends, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, today's show's one sheet is available to Patreon supporters using the link in the description. The one sheet gives you the links to all the videos and stories used on today's show, so you can dive even deeper into each issue. And with that, our next show will be Wednesday evening at the usual time. Until then, I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. All right, friends, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button above. Once you do, tell your friends, share it, spread the word about the 13-minute news hour so we can keep growing. And for more great content, check out these videos right here, and I'll see you next time.